And on top of all that, give the republics the right to secede from the unified state without any conditions? Without any conditions. Yeah, just go ahead and leave like the velvet divorce of Czechoslovakia. Yeah, just have it velvet. At first glance, this looks absolutely incomprehensible. This is crazy. This is crazy. But only at first glance. There's an explanation. After the revolution, the Bolsheviks' main goal was to stay in power at all costs. That's all the Bolsheviks wanted. They won the revolution. They want to stay in power at all cost, absolutely at all cost. So they did everything for this purpose, including accepting the humiliating Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. The Treaty of what? Litovsk. The Bolsheviks accepted the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. How dare you listen to Brest-Litovsk? Although the military and economic situation in Imperial Germany and its allies was dramatic, and the outcome of the First World War was a foregone conclusion, and satisfied any demands and wishes of the nationalists within the country. When it comes to the historical destiny of Russia and its peoples, Lenin's principles of state development were not just a mistake. They were worse than a mistake, as the saying goes. They were worse than a mistake. Is that a saying? You know how the saying goes. You can make a mistake, but you can make worse than a mistake. I know it's cliche. In Russia, things that bad? Hey, Ukraine's got their own problems. They don't need Russia's fucking problems on top of their own problems. Shit. Talk about two fucking men grabbing a hold of each other as they're drowning. No, Putin, you drown on your own in Moscow. You go back to Moscow and drown on your own. We don't need to drown with you. This became patently clear after the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. Of course, we cannot change past events, but we must at least admit them openly and honestly without any reservations. Yeah, this was the past. This is how the past had happened. Personally, I can add that no political factors, however impressive or profitable they may seem at any given moment, no political factors, however impressive or profitable they may seem at any given moment, can or may be used as the fundamental principles of statehood. Can or may be used as the fundamental principles of statehood. The charisma of this man is off the charts. I'm not trying to put the blame on anyone, except for the Ukrainian people who all must die. The situation in the country at that time, both before and after the Civil War, was extremely complicated. It was critical. Critical. The Civil War. Oh, that was right after the Bolsheviks. The only thing I would like to say today is that this is exactly how it was. It's a historical fact. You pieces of shit. Actually, as I have already said, Soviet Ukraine is the result of the Bolsheviks' policy and can rightfully be called Vladimir Lenin's Ukraine. Vladimir Lenin's Ukraine. He made the Ukraine. He created the Ukraine. The Ukraine was never a thing before Lenin. Lenin made it up in his own head. He pooped it out. He's the author. He's the architect. This fucking communist Bolshevik dickhead. This is fully and comprehensively corroborated by archival documents, including Lenin's harsh instructions regarding starving the shit out of them, enslaving them, using them for cannon fodder, which was actually shoved into Ukraine. Wait a second. So he tried to turn the Ukrainians into Russians. What are you trying to say now? He starved the fuck out of them? Today, the grateful progeny has overturned monuments to Lenin in Ukraine. But you're saying he's a pile of shit. So are you happy that the Ukrainians are overturning Lenin monuments? Yeah, the Ukrainians, they don't like the Nazis, they don't like the communists because they killed fucking millions of them. 4 million communists. 4 million. The Holodomor killed 4 million Ukrainians and the Nazis killed 7 million. Yeah, I'd say fuck the Nazis and communists too. Fuck Lenin, fuck Trotsky, fuck, Goebbels, and fuck, Goring and whoever the fuck else. Tojo and goddamn fucking Mussolini. Today, the grateful progeny. So it seems like he's saying they should respect Lenin. They call it decommunization. So, and that you're a decommunist, you motherfucker. What? I don't understand. You want decommunization? Well, very well. This suits us just fine, but why stop halfway? We are ready to show what real decommunizations would mean for Ukraine. Oh, shit. Oh, snap. You want to we'll decommunize your ass. We'll decommunize the fuck out of you. How about that? It doesn't sound like Lenin at all. That sounds like George W. Bush. You're a capitalist imperialist. Going back to history, I would like to repeat that the Soviet Union was established in the place of the former Russian Empire. So really, they stole us. They robbed us. But practice showed immediately that it was impossible to preserve or govern such a vast and complex territory on the amorphous principles that amounted to confederation. You can't govern this entire territory with a confederation. We're far removed from reality in the historical tradition. You need one country, one state. You don't need a Ukraine, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, or Germany, or France, or a United States. All you need is one Russia. Imagine if we just had one Russia. How effective and totalitarian, how efficient, how beautifully, just mathematically, wait, they're not communists. So this isn't even for the working class. This is for the oligarchs. Hey, the oligarchs, the plutocrats of Russia want Ukraine. Oh, well, shit, since the goddamn plutocrats of Russia want the Ukraine, how can we say no to that? It'd be better if they were the goddamn Soviets. Why don't you just... It is logical that the Red Terror and a rapid slide into Stalin's dictatorship, the domination of the communist ideology, and the Communist Party's monopoly on power, nationalization, and the planned economy, all this transformed the formally declared but ineffective principles of government into a mere declaration. In reality, the Union republics did not have any sovereign rights, none at all. This practically resulted with the creation of a tightly centralized, absolutely unitary state. The practical result was the creation of a tightly centralized, absolutely unitary state. In fact, what Stalin fully implemented was not Lenin's, but his own principles of government. Stalin was doing his own thing, not Lenin's. He wasn't doing Marxism, but he did not make the relevant amendments to the cornerstone documents to the Constitution. Stalin wasn't a constitutionalist. He did not formally revise Lenin's principles underlying the Soviet Union. From the look at it, there seemed to be no need for that because everything seemed to be working well in conditions. From the look of it, there seemed to be no need for that because of the totalitarian regime, and outwardly it looked wonderful, attractive, even super democratic, and yet it's a great pity that the fundamental and formally legal foundations of our state were not promptly cleansed of the odious and utopian fantasies inspired by the revolution, which are absolutely destructive for any normal state. He's against the 1917 Russian Revolution. As it happened often in our country before, nobody gave any thought to the future. It seems that the Communist Party leaders were convinced that they had created a solid system of government and that their policies had settled the ethnic issue for good. But falsification, misconception, tampering with public opinion have a high cost. The virus of nationalist ambitions is still with us, and the mine laid at the initial stage to destroy state immunity to the disease. As I have already said, the mine was the right of secession from the Soviet Union. In the mid-1980s, the increasing socioeconomic problems and the apparent crisis of the planned economy aggravated, which essentially was not based on any expectations or unfulfilled dreams of the Soviet peoples, but primarily however, instead of analyzing the situation, taking appropriate measures, first of all, in the economy, and gradually transforming the political system and government in a well-considered and balanced manner, the Communist Party leadership only engaged in open double talk about the revival of the Leninist principle of national self. Moreover, in the course of power struggle within the Communist Party itself, each of the opposing sides, in a bid to expand its thoughtlessly incite and encourage nationalist sentiments, manipulating them, promising their potential supporters. Against the backdrop of the superficial and populist rhetoric about democracy and a bright future based either on a market, but amid a true impoverishment of the people and widespread shortages, no one among the powers that be was thinking about the inevitable tragic consequences for the country. Next, they entirely embarked on the track beaten at the inception of the USSR and pandering to the ambitions of the nationalist elites nurtured within their own party ranks. But in doing so, they forgot that the CPSU no longer had, thank God, the tools for retaining power in the country itself. Tools such as state terror and a Stalinist-type dictatorship. And that the notorious guiding role of the party was disappearing without a trace, like a morning mist right before their eyes. And then, September 1989, plenary session of the CPSU Central Committee approved a truly fatal document, the so-called ethnic policy of the party in modern conditions, the CPSU platform. And including the following provisions, I quote, "The republics of the USSR shall possess all the rights appropriate to their status as sovereign socialist states." The next point, the supreme representative bodies of power of the USSR republics can challenge and suspend the operation of the USSR government's resolutions and directives in their territory. And finally, each republic of the USSR shall have citizenship of its own, which shall apply to all of its residents. Wasn't it clear what these formulas and decisions would lead to? Now, it is not the time or place to go into matters pertaining to state or constitutional law or define the concept of citizenship, but one may wonder, why was it necessary to rock the country even more in that already complicated situation? Facts remain facts. Even 2 years before the collapse of the USSR, its fate was actually predetermined. It is now that radicals and nationalists, including and primarily those in Ukraine, are taking credit for having gained independence. As we can see, this is absolutely wrong. The disintegration of our unified country was brought about the historic strategic mistakes on the part of the Bolshevik leaders. It's fucking Lenin's fault and Stalin. Mistakes committed at different times in state building and in economic and ethnic policies. It's goddamn Trotsky. The collapse of the historical Russia known as the USSR is on their conscience. Fucking Trotsky deserved that ice pick despite all these injustices, lies, and outright pillage of Russia. It is our people who accepted the new geopolitical reality that took shape after the dissolution of the USSR and recognized the new independent states. Not only did Russia recognize these countries, but helped its CIS partners even though it faced a very dire situation. They used to be our countries. This included our Ukrainian colleagues who turned to us for financial support many times from the very moment they declared. Our country provided this assistance while respecting Ukraine's dignity and sovereignty. Our country provided this assistance while, according to expert assessments confirmed by a simple calculation of our energy prices, the subsidized loans Russia provided to Ukraine along with economic and trade preferences. The overall benefit for the Ukrainian budget in the period from 91 to 2013 amounted to $250 billion. $250 billion! However, there was more to it than that. By the end of 1991, the USSR owed some $100 billion to other countries in international funds. By the end of 91, that was when the Reds went wire to wire. Initially, there was this idea that all former Soviet republics will pay back these loans together in the spirit of solidarity and proportionally to their economic potential. However, Russia undertook to pay back all Soviet debts, delivered on this promise by completing this process in 2017. In exchange for that, the newly independent states had to hand over to Russia part of the Soviet foreign assets. However, Kiev failed to ratify these agreements and later simply refused to honor them by making demands. What? This is something else. He's talking about some other shit now. For a share of the diamond treasury, gold reserves, as well as former USSR property and other assets abroad. He's like, give us our shit back. They used to be our colonies. They used to be our stuff. Give us our shit back. Nevertheless, that's like the British coming back and saying, hey, Russia always worked with Ukraine in an open, honest manner, as I always said, with respect for its. We developed our ties in multiple fields. 2011, bilateral trade exceeded $50 billion. Those are good times in 2011 under Barack Obama. Let me note that in 2019, that was before the pandemic, Ukraine's trade with all EU countries combined was below this indicator. At the same time, it was striking how the Ukrainian authorities always preferred dealing with Russia in a way that ensured that they enjoy all the rights and privileges while remaining free from any obligations. The officials in Kyiv replaced partnership with a parasitic attitude, acting at times in an extremely brash manner. Suffice it to recall the continuous blackmail on energy transits and the fact that they literally stole gas. I can add that Kyiv tried to use dialogue with Russia as a bargaining chip in its relations with the West, using the threat of closer ties for blackmailing the West to secure preferences by claiming that otherwise Russia would have a bigger influence. At the same time, the Ukrainian authorities, I would like to emphasize this, began by building their statehood on the negation, trying to distort the mentality and historical memory of millions of people of entire generations living in Ukraine. It is not surprising that Ukrainian society was faced with the rise of far-right nationalism, which rapidly devolved into aggressive Russophobia and neo-Nazism. This resulted in the participation of Ukrainian nationalists and neo-Nazis in the terrorist groups in the North Caucasus and the increasingly loud territorial claims to Russia. A role in this was played by external forces, which used a ramified network of NGOs and special services to nurture their clients in Ukraine and to bring their representatives to the seats of authority. It should be noted that Ukraine actually never had stable traditions of real statehood. Therefore, in 1991, it opted for mindlessly emulating foreign models which have no relation to history or Ukrainian culture. Political government institutions were readjusted many times to the rapidly growing clans and their self-serving interest, which had nothing to do with the interests of the Ukrainian people. Essentially, the so-called pro-Western civilizational choice made by the oligarchic Ukrainian authorities was not and is not aimed at creating better conditions in the interest of people's well-being, but at keeping the billions of dollars that the oligarchs have stolen from the Ukrainians and are holding in their accounts in Western, which while reverently accommodating the geopolitical rivals of Russia, some industrial and financial groups in the parties and politicians on their payroll, We'll come back to this.